Hello, folks. I'm Josh McGee. Welcome to another episode of the Gateway to Soccer Show. Thank you so much for tuning in. As always, yes, I am back in the home studio. I'm back home here in St. Louis. I've been here for a little bit more than a week now on spring break. I don't have any classes to have to worry about. And right now, in terms of the spring sports season in Upper Iowa, we don't have any games going on campus or around town. So I had the time to come back here to St. Louis. It worked out perfectly with what's going on here with the sport of soccer and the city as well. I got to take in a couple of matches. Of course, I'll talk a little bit about that as we move along, but I figured, hey, I've got the time. Let's drop another episode of the Gateway to Soccer Show. It's been a while, pretty much since the holidays, since I dropped one. So I thought I'd put together a relatively short show. I usually say that, but it ends up being a pretty normal episode, but we'll see how long this one goes. Again, had the opportunity to see a couple of city matches. We'll talk about that and all the player signing news that they've had over the past couple of weeks. Want to get into some MLS. Again, the season has started. Earliest start to the season in league history. So we've already had a couple of matches for everybody. Want to give some of my takeaways about what I've seen so far. And I would encourage you all to watch all the way through to the end. I'm going to have some thoughts on some pretty serious subjects, some things that have happened over the past couple of weeks, really just for me to kind of get my feelings out there, to kind of talk about my perspective on a couple of these subjects, my thoughts on how things are being handled. And I will encourage you all, especially to, at the very least, if you don't watch anything else on this episode, watch my thoughts at the end on a couple of those subjects. But again, it's been good to be back. Good to see some familiar faces at some of those matches. Again, I'll get to that here in just a little bit. But I want to talk about the Champions League. We've already had a couple of teams qualify for the quarterfinals this past week. We're going to have a couple more, of course, rounding out the rest of that field upcoming here next week. But I want to get into those first few legs that we had. And, of course, this past week in that competition, what all went down. So first up, of course, we've got to start with Real Madrid versus PSG. Now, of course, the big storylines going into this matchup before the first leg were, of course, Kylian Mbappe, long been rumored to making a move eventually to Real Madrid from PSG, arguably the best player in the world, best offensive player in the world, depending on who you ask. So, of course, him going up against the club he's rumored to go to is a big deal. And, of course, for Madrid, you're going up against arguably the greatest front three in the game, one of the best front threes, at least on paper, in all of soccer, of course, that being Neymar, Lionel Messi, and Mbappe. How are they going to deal with it? Of course, with that aging core that they've got, will they be able to come and step up to the task and be kind of that old school Madrid? Well, it didn't look like that in the first leg. Of course, it was a kind of a slugfest, surprisingly, between the two teams, but Mbappe scores that late goal in stoppage time to take that 1-0 lead on aggregate, all the way back, of course, to Spain this week. Second leg goes down. Madrid started out pretty well, but in the end, it's Mbappe being sprung on a break by Neymar. Cool finish at the near post, beats Courtois. PSG are up 2-0 on aggregate and go into halftime with that scoreline. So again, you're thinking to yourself, okay, PSG, we know about their history. They've had a few struggles. They've had a few epic choke jobs along the way. But this version of PSG, Madrid, they're going to have to open up a little bit more, and that, of course, just plays into the hand of Neymar, Messi, and Mbappe. Well, that didn't happen. As all great collapses sometimes start, it started with a mistake. That, of course, was kind of given away by Gianluigi Donnarumma. Just a bad, kind of held on the ball too long at his feet, kind of got blown up there by a Madrid player. Eventually, the balls worked towards Karim Benzema in the box. Boom, he scores. There's a goal, and Madrid begin the comeback. Benzema would score his second just a little bit later, of course, tying up the aggregate scoreline, 2-1 lead by Madrid in the game, but 2-2 on aggregate. Remember, of course, no away goals this year. So at that time, we were headed for extra time. Well, right from the kickoff, once again, just a huge error on the part of PSG. Benzema latches onto the ball, puts in another beautiful strike. He scores a hat trick. He becomes the oldest player in Champions League history to score a hat trick at 34. But of course, it's the hat trick that completes the comeback for Real Madrid, all the way to them being leading 3-2 on aggregate. They were able to hold on there for the win in the game, and also, of course, over the two ties. It was truly just a spectacular game to watch. Again, PSG, they looked like they were in control, but just like that one little mistake, and they absolutely collapsed. And again, I said this on Twitter yesterday afternoon. This was really the Madrid and the PSG I've come to know over the past few years. Starting off with Madrid. Again, I know some of these young guys like Vinicius Jr., Asensio have really kind of stepped up and helped provide a little bit of depth for Madrid. But it was the old guys. It was Benzema. It was Luka Modric, who had that brilliant run then passed to Vinicius Jr. He got the return ball, and then he was able to play in Benzema for that second goal. Again, well into his mid-30s. Toni Kroos, again, also above the age of 30. It was the old guys getting things done. Carvajal wasn't as bad on the outside versus Mbappe as he was in that first leg. They just got it done. They found a way, just showing that classic, never say die attitude, never truly out of it Madrid style of play that we've gotten used to over the years. That's why they're champions. I know Cristiano Ronaldo had a lot to do with it, but still, a lot of these guys were involved in those wins over the years, and they showcased it once again this past match. For PSG, again, it's another epic collapse. You have one of the best front threes ever, and you can only produce, the one goal through Mbappe. I thought Messi was a complete no-show. I don't know what this says about his kind of, career going forward, where he's at. I know he's got all those great assists in League One this season, but he hasn't been putting in the goals for PSG. They badly needed him yesterday. Neymar looked good in spurts, but really couldn't put together a couple of good shots on goal. It really was just Mbappe, and that was about it. The defense, again, PSG have never truly focused on that over the years. Remember, they let Thiago Silva go for free, and he's doing pretty good for Chelsea right now. They probably could have used him on Wednesday there. So, they've never really focused on that part of it. Donnarumma, again, just a bad day at the office, in my opinion. But, at this type of level, one mistake, and that's what could happen. So, again, PSG just unable to kind of showcase, the patience needed to see out games. It's an underrated part of the game of soccer, knowing when to be smart, be tactical, and hold on to what you have instead of, brazenly going forward and trying to get too much. So, again, with PSG, there's a lot of questions going forward about the players. Mbappe, if you can't beat him, join him, right? I mean, this kind of doesn't really, give him an excuse to stay with PSG. I mean, Madrid beat them. So it makes total sense for him to want to go there in the end. Messi's getting up there. We've heard about Neymar wanting to come to MLS because they've got longer vacations. Again, also, Pochettino has been rumored to go other places. I'm not sure how much of an endorsement he will get after this one. But again, lot of questions that will need to be answered in the summer by PSG. As far as Madrid goes, dangerous, tricky side, has to be said. So again, that had to be easily the most exciting, a couple of fixtures here in this round of the Champions League. Then you had what was the other close tie of this week, and that was, of course, Liverpool versus Inter Milan. Liverpool, of course, had that great showing in the first leg where they won 2-0. Again, but in that second leg, they didn't really showcase the same, offensive firepower and prowess that they showed in the first leg. It seemed a little bit kind of like walking on pins and needles there. In Inter, they started getting more and more chances as they grew into the match. And in the second half, Lautaro Martinez, absolute screamer to open the scoring. Inter were right there trying to get back into the tie, but Alexis Sanchez gets that second yellow card. He gets sent off and pretty much almost effectively ends all hopes for a comeback for Inter. Liverpool were able to hold on. They lose on the night, but they move through on aggregate 2-1. Again, with Liverpool, my concern has always been about depth. If one person gets hurt, someone like a Trent Alexander-Arnold, they don't have a natural replacement for him. Some of the other guys in the midfield, of course, up top as well. And in this game, they just didn't show, again, that same, brazen mentality that we've come to know from a Jurgen Klopp side. Inter, they took advantage of it, and if Alexis Sanchez doesn't get sent off there, they had a good chance of completing that comeback. As far as the second yellow, again, it's really tough because I know he wins the ball first there, but on the follow-through, and it wasn't a straight red, it was just a yellow card. So, again, there's not too much to be argued there. I know there's been some history with that official in Champions Leagues, but, again, didn't have too much problem with it in the end. Obviously, I know kind of changed the game there from that point, but still, I think Liverpool overall were the better of the two teams, and they deserve to move on. As far as the two other teams who have already moved on, not much needs to be said because they are pretty much the two co-favorites at this point. Bayern Munich, uninspiring first leg, but they absolutely played lights out in the second leg versus Salzburg. They win the match 7-1 and go through 8-2 on aggregate. Lewandowski, first half hat trick. Again, not much needs to be said about Bayern team that has had some troubles, especially as of late in the Bundesliga, maybe dropping a few points here and there. But they took it to task there and moved on pretty easily. Manchester City, on the other hand, versus Sporting, pretty much won that tie in the first leg when they won 5-0. 0-0 draw this week, but again, business pretty much had been taken care of. They're playing, of course, their best ball right now. Again, a little bit of a fight in the Premier League. They still kind of have to worry about that just a little bit. But as we know, over the past few years, their sole focus has been on the Champions League, getting that last trophy that has eluded Pep in City. So again, they've looked really good. I would, again, consider them, along with Bayern, the two co-favorites going into this quarterfinals. But of course, they'll face stiffer competition than the two clubs that they just faced. So we'll have to see on that front. But yeah, both those clubs really looking good going into the quarterfinals. As far as next week is concerned, we still have 3 ties that are currently right now tied on aggregate after the first leg. First there, it's Ajax versus Benfica. I favor Ajax just a little bit to go through. I think they have a little bit more offensive firepower, but I think it's going to be a close result, and we'll see who advances there. Then you've got Manchester United versus Atletico Madrid. We know about United. They've been struggling as of late. Just lost badly in the Manchester derby versus City. Is that going to carry over into this fixture? Atletico, we'll see what kind of team shows up on that day. If they're in top form defensively, I think they will be the ones to advance over United. Then, of course, here, representing old school Juventus jersey, they, of course, are taking on Villarreal, tied 1-1 at the moment. I know Juventus, they've had to deal with a couple of different injuries. Of course, Weston McKennie, hopefully that, he recovers as quickly as possible. But they've been doing great things in Serie A, and I think they will be the ones to advance here over Villarreal. Then, of course, Chelsea, right? Good news, already up 2-0 after that first leg as they travel to France to take on Lille in the second. But they are dealing with a lot right now, and pretty much none of it has to do with on-the-field stuff. I don't want to get into, again, the whole, spiel of it all with what's going on with Chelsea at the moment. Of course, the news just dropped yesterday that Roman Abramovich's assets have been frozen, and that kind of includes Chelsea as well. They can't sell any more tickets. They can't sell merchandise. They can't sign players. They can't extend player contracts, and that was really important kind of going into the summer here. But there's a lot of chaos. Of course, we know about Abramovich wanting to sell the club as well. That process cannot continue unless the UK government gets control of that. So, yeah, that's a lot to deal with. That's going to be a lot of questions. I know Thomas Tuchel has really had to deal with a lot of those types of questions in his pressers, in his interviews. I know that's really grown on him. Can they survive that chaos and, come up with a professional result? They've got that lead already. All they got to do is put together another complete defensive performance, and they should move on to the quarterfinals. I think they can do that. I think they will do that. But they've got a lot to deal with here going forward over the next couple of months here to end the season. So, again, Champions League in terms of, again, I think the Real Madrid-PSG match really brought it back into the light in terms of just all the soccer that's going on right now. It still remains one of the best tournaments in all of the world. So I think the excitement was brought back by that match. We'll see how next week goes down. But, of course, yeah, when we get going here in the quarterfinals, there's not going to be an easy out. I mean, just think about it. The likes of maybe like an Ajax or maybe a Manchester United would be considered the worst team left in the quarterfinals. That's how stacked we're going to get. We'll see if the Premier League can put together 4 of those 8 teams and, again, have another dominant showing once again. But, of course, like we've seen the tip of the top, Munich and Man City, Real Madrid, kind of getting back to the old school Real Madrid, Premier League clubs as well. It's going to have the makings of another great Champions League. All right, moving on now. I want to get into some MLS. Of course, we're now under a year away from St. Louis City SC beginning their inaugural season in Major League Soccer. So it's a good time to really start getting into the league and following it from week to week. We've already had a couple of matches for each club because, of course, it was the earliest start to the season in league history, trying to accommodate the World Cup coming up here at the end of the year. So while it's still pretty much early, I think it's now a good time to kind of start establishing some early takeaways. So I've got 5 of them here for you all this week, some early takeaways from what I've seen in MLS so far. Coming in at number 5, don't panic about Seattle. The Sounders, they are off to an 0-2 start, which we know is like the complete opposite of what we're used to from them over these past 2 years. They face the Galaxy this weekend, who are near the top of the Western Conference standings. So obviously, if it was a different club, I would say it'd be kind of time to really start wondering about how they're going to fix things. But it's Seattle. They still boast one of the most talented rosters in the league, especially offensively. We just saw in the CONCACAF Champions League, they put up a 3-0 spot versus Lyon there in that first leg of the quarterfinals. They're going to be fine. With some of these clubs right now competing in the CCL, they've got to worry about that more so about the early stages of MLS. I know the West is tough, but Seattle, again, they've been tremendously consistent over the years. They're going to figure things out once they kind of, get through the CCL and, kind of then get their attention back on MLS. So, again, if it was any other club, I would say there'd be cause for concern. But right now, too early to say that about Seattle Sounders. Coming in at number 4, Charlotte FC so far have been more sizzle than steak. Yes, you've got to be impressed with that attendance record they set in their inaugural home match there versus the Galaxy this past weekend. But the fact of the matter is they haven't scored yet in their first couple of matches in MLS. Their manager pretty much said it best, a few weeks ago. We're screwed when he was talking about the roster. It just doesn't look like it's complete yet, or one that can kind of, compete at the top tiers of MLS. I know they just got their big DP, striker signing back for this last match, but still didn't have too much of an impact on the game. They haven't been able to score yet. And as we have seen, these types of, opening home matches in MLS for these expansion clubs, they're big, events for the city. Kind of a celebration of, getting a new team and, of course, a celebration of the city. But it's not really what you come to expect from week to week. Of course, some of those, big-time clubs such as, like Atlanta, LAFC, some of these other places, eventually, yeah, they were able to kind of build that culture to where they get these big crowds consistently. But Charlotte, if this is going to be the results here from week to week, they're definitely not going to see that type of crowd at that stadium, even in their inaugural season. So they're going to have to figure some things out, pick up some results here soon, or otherwise they really don't want to be branded as the new FC Cincinnati, because as we know, again, they just have never gotten truly off the ground, and they continue to be a dumpster fire of a club. You don't want to be there. You want to be a little bit higher than that. But right now, Charlotte, they're just not at that place yet. Up next at number 3, maybe a little too early for this type of a proclamation, but I just want to get it out there, see what people think. I'm just going to throw a name out there for MVP frontrunner through a couple of matches, and this guy's name would have to be Lucas Zelarayan. Zelarayan already has 3 goals and assists for Columbus Crew, who, of course, are unbeaten so far through their first couple of matches here in MLS. I know they kind of just blew a lead here in that 3-3 draw versus San Jose Earthquakes. Zelarayan didn't have much to do with that, especially, though, on the defensive end. But when you think about the Columbus Crew, they've fallen off just a little bit since winning MLS Cup. They still got a talented group of players, but if you think about it, Jossie Zardes, I know he scored in that last match, but he has started the first 2 on the bench. That's a big name and a lot of money taking up a spot there on the bench. Zelarayan has kind of had to be the guy that does everything, score goals, create, just do a bunch of different things for that club, and so far is what has led them to, remaining unbeaten. He scored some absolutely wicked goals so far here early in the season. I expect more of those to come in throughout. And yeah, just a guy, again, who's kind of holding up a club right now, pushing them through these first couple of matches and helping them get to positive results. So again, just maybe not so much, a big name. I know Carlos Vela gotten off to a good start. You got someone like Lewis Morgan who's putting in a lot of goals for the Red Bulls. But I'm looking at Zelarayan and what he's doing right now for Columbus. Up next at number 2, are Austin FC set for a Nashville SC-like trajectory in their second season. I use Nashville as an example because they kind of came into MLS on good footing. They made the playoffs in their first year, albeit, of course, with that weird format due to the pandemic. But they've quickly established themselves as a top-tier club, first in the Eastern Conference. Then I believe this year they're competing in the West because Charlotte coming in this season. But they've quickly established themselves in MLS. Are Austin set for that type of trajectory? They lead the league so far for the first couple of weeks with 10 goals scored. Now, of course, the caveat is they went up against Cincinnati and also Inter Miami CF, who just have their own crazy amount of problems to deal with right now. But still, it's a huge improvement from last year. That was one of the big struggles with Austin. They got a nice group of players who have gotten off to better starts this year. Of course, you got someone like Dominguez, who has been, helping out, scoring goals, creating as well. Things looking up right now for Austin. They got a tough task coming up. I believe they're playing Portland here this upcoming weekend. So we'll see with the change in competition how they look. But still, you got to be, optimistic right now if you're an Austin FC fan that this season is going to be a heck of a lot better than that inaugural season was. And lastly, my number 1 takeaway from MLS so far, I believe that New York and Los Angeles are going to dominate the headlines this year in Major League Soccer. NYCFC, already the reigning MLS Cup champions, they're currently involved in the CONCACAF Champions League, so I know they've had a little bit of a slow start in MLS. That'll get figured out once they get through the CCL. Red Bulls, they've looked really good. I already mentioned Lewis Morgan, hat trick that he had last week. I think that was versus Toronto, but they look like they're going to be a really good club this year. Then on the other side, LAFC and the LA Galaxy unbeaten through their first couple of matches. Carlos Vela, we have to see if he can overcome this kind of most recent injury. Hopefully it's just a knock and he'll be able to continue his season, but he got off to a great start. Chicharito, the Galaxy, seemed to be kind of, rejuvenated just a little bit, kind of have tweaked the roster just a tad to kind of get it back to where they needed to be. But those 2 clubs off to good starts as well. Of course, they are already big market clubs. They've already had a lot of success. We know about the Galaxy, all the championships they've won, LAFC, how successful they've been in the regular season. Red Bulls have a lot of great history in MLS, and of course, NYCFC, the reigning champions. So I know some people may not want to admit it, but I think, again, those types of clubs, the starts they've gotten off to, and the talent that is already there, again, I think those 4 clubs, they're going to make some headlines here in MLS this season. So those are just a few takeaways I've had from MLS over the first couple weeks of the season. But now I want to shift focus to a club who is currently not competing in MLS, but will do so in 2023, and that, of course, is St. Louis City SC. City have been some busy bees since we last talked. They've unveiled several new aspects of the club. They've dropped a few schedules, which I'll talk about here in just a little bit. But of course, the big news that has gone down over these past couple months is they've made a handful of player signings. Their first player signings will be going directly to the first team and will be competing in MLS in 2023. I have some notes with me here that I'm going to read off of. I just want to get player pronunciations and some facts about their careers right before really doing a deep dive and kind of giving my analysis of these signings. So here we go. The first signing that City made was Samir Pedro. Pedro is a 24-year-old Bosnian international left back who plays for FK Sarajevo, has made multiple appearances for the Bosnian national team. The second signing that City made was Tomas Ostrak. Ostrak is a 22-year-old attacking midfielder from the Czech Republic who plays for FC Cologne in the German Bundesliga. He is featured for several of the Czech's youth national teams and, according to Transfer Market, was in high demand by several different clubs, especially attached to the Bundesliga, but he wanted a move to MLS. The most recent signing City made was João Klaus. Klaus is a 25-year-old forward originally from Brazil, but he joined City from TSG Hoffenheim in the Bundesliga as their first ever designated player. He was originally recruited to Hoffenheim by Lutz van den Schiel, the club's sporting director, and scored 20-plus goals during loan spells with HJK Helsinki in Finland and LASK, predominant club there in Austria. He is currently on loan at Sint Truidens VV in Belgium, in the top tier there in Belgium. So again, really interesting signings across the board, but you can already kind of see the theme, right? 24, 22, and 25. Again, getting players who are right now currently in their prime or who are on the cusp of entering their prime, who kind of play a similar style to what, again, head coach Carnell and St. Louis City want to play. So there's clearly a path and a strategy to the types of players they want to bring in. Remember, Lutz talked about this. They're not looking for the best players. They're looking for the right ones. Kind of goes to that if you watched Miracle, the Disney movie, the head coach there, Herb Brooks, says, looking for the right players, not the best ones. That's clearly what this type of strategy is. Although, again, it's really good to get players who have experience with the first team national team there, with Pedro and the Bosnian national team. And, of course, Ostrak being a part of the Czech Republic youth national teams. Pedro, of course, good to get a Bosnian international in, kind of appealed to the Bosnian community here in St. Louis. That is a big part of it. Ostrak, again, he was wanted by several different clubs, but he wanted to move to MLS. So City were able to take advantage there. With Klaus, again, someone who is familiar with Lutz and the style that he wants to play. Lutz, in terms of, bringing guys to Hoffenheim, he's got a good track record there. So I know there's a little bit of uneasiness. He's not a big name, and you're filling one of those designated player spots already. Paid, I believe, $3 million for a transfer fee for him. So it's a little bit of a gamble, a little bit of a risk. But again, in terms of the type of player that City want to bring in to play with their style, Klaus kind of fits the bill there. So that one, there's a little bit of uneasiness with that. It's a little bit of a gamble. The other two, I think, again, kind of good spots, left back, attacking midfielder, good spots to kind of attack here early on in the early process of building this roster. As far as other player signings, we already know the former number 2 overall pick in the draft by the Philadelphia Union, Joshua Yarrow, is already competing with City's MLS Next Pro team, but he is expected to join the first team once that eventually, gets put together. And of course, there have been rumors that City are in the race along with several other clubs for the signing of Swedish international and Armenia Bielefeld center back Joachim Nelson. Nelson would be a great pickup for City, addressing one of the key parts of a roster. Of course, that defense, that center back position. He's had a great career in the Bundesliga. And of course, he's got experience with the Swedish national team as well. Again, would be a tremendous pickup for City. The fact that they are competing with several other different clubs for his signature, he can be acquired via a free transfer. I believe this summer his contract runs out there with Bielefeld. Would be a huge get if they're able to outbid several other teams there. So we'll have to keep track of where things go on that front. Of course, there are expectations that City will sign players from this MLS Next Pro team potentially as well to fill out a few roster spots. But again, still very early on in the process. Got to wait for the European seasons to wrap up before you can really start, digging deep and trying to find some of those big name players that people recognize to join the club for next season. And of course, obviously, you got to wait for the MLS season to wrap up before you start getting those guys who've got experience in the league, know how to navigate it, who've been successful in it. Those are the ones that are really going to take City to new heights. So at least for early on, it's good to see that City are getting an earlier start on the roster-making process than their predecessors there in Charlotte. They're getting, again, young players who are either approaching their prime or in their prime and who fit the system that they want to play. So again, I appreciate the clear strategy that is being implemented in the player signing process. We'll see, especially with Klaus, if these guys are able, the payoff comes, immediately or eventually, within the first couple of seasons. But overall, I think it's an impressive first couple of steps here with player signings for City. As far as the other teams within the City structure, we saw this week the schedule drop for the academy teams, the under-16 and the under-17s competing in MLS Next. They will get back underway starting the spring season here this month. But of course, the big schedule that dropped was for MLS Next Pro and for St. Louis City SC 2. They will play their inaugural match on March 25th. They will host at Herman Stadium Rochester, New York FC, which is going to be their first year in existence as well. This is important because it's the first ever match for MLS Next Pro. City have been given the distinction of hosting the first ever match of this kind. There's going to be several dignitaries in town. Again, it's going to be played at Herman Stadium. Big crowd expected, big event, and it's going to be really cool that City get to host this one and kind of showcase what they've already done. We'll talk a little bit about their preseason here in a second. But again, it's a really cool opportunity that they will get there to host Rochester. As far as the whole season is concerned, they're going to host matches either at Herman Stadium or at Ralph Court Stadium there for SIUE Edwardsville. So again, really cool to see that they'll be at these college stadiums, kind of showcasing themselves either side of the border, and important for people to get out there and to support, and just a good opportunity to showcase what this team is doing. So that'll be throughout the year. There's been rumors that maybe by the end of the season there could be a match that could be hosted there in Centene Stadium. That would be really cool. But until that time, again, it's a good opportunity for people to go out and see them play at SLU or at SIUE. As for prepping for that regular season opener, this past weekend, I had the chance to go out and see St. Louis City SC 2 in preseason action. They were able to defeat USL Championship side Louisville City FC 1-0 out there at the Creve Coeur Soccer Complex. Now, for those of you who were out there, you already know the wind was a huge factor. Just absolutely incredible, had a huge effect on not just the long balls, even the balls, along the ground, corner kicks, everything was a huge deal for both teams to have to play through. But again, this was the final preseason match for Louisville ahead of the start of the upcoming USL Championship season. They played a lot of regulars, all the way from, again, goalkeeper Kyle Morton, which St. Louis FC fans are familiar with. You had Owenby, you had, I think, Cameron Lancaster got some time in there as well. A lot of guys who are familiar, mainstays of that Louisville team. And yet they didn't really get much going in this match. I thought St. Louis City, they controlled things for most of the way. They kind of kept Louisville at arm's length in the defensive end. A great goal towards the top corner is what eventually proved to be the match winner. And yeah, I thought City looked very impressive. Their pressing style really gave Louisville fits, caused a couple of turnovers as well. So you can clearly see the strategy and the idea and the philosophy that City are trying to get across with this playing style. I thought it worked really well in this match. We'll have to see going forward how it does. But against the club that, again, was prepping for the beginning of their season, compete at the top of the USL Championship, even with the weather conditions, I thought City did a great job. So again, it was a great atmosphere. It was good to see the stands absolutely packed. Again, obviously, old Kings Cup rivalry there between St. Louis FC and Louisville City FC. So fans, of course, still motivated and still excited to see this type of matchup. It was just a great day overall, and City were able to come away with the win. After the match, I had the opportunity to catch up with Kyle Morton. Again, former St. Louis FC goalkeeper, was part of that playoff team a couple of years ago. He's had a great career in the USL Championship. Also last year, had the opportunity to play in the final match of the MLS regular season for the Houston Dynamo. Had some experience with Memphis 901 FC last year as well. That was successful too. So had the chance to catch up with him, talk to him about the match, about prepping with his new club for the upcoming season, and some of the experience and lessons that he took away from his experience in MLS and what he can take away with it going forward. So it was a brief conversation. Obviously, the wind, quality wasn't always going to be great, but here's just a couple minutes of me catching up with Kyle Morton. Hope you enjoy.
I thought for our last preseason game, there's still things that we can work on. I think with the wind, it adds a different element to the game where maybe we had to adjust our game plan here and there. And I think there's times that we did well, and there's obviously some things that we can work on. And it takes time to kind of gel with the guys and figure out each other's tendencies. And I think we've done a good job. And I think off the field we're getting to know each other, and on the field we're getting to know each other, and it just takes time. Yeah, I learned a lot about myself, learned a lot about myself as a player, and it gave me a good motivation, and it's one of those things that I'll remember for a while, and gives me a little bit of chip on my shoulder. And it's a good thing to have happen.
So now you come to Louisville again, always one of the top teams in the USL Championship. Expectations always through the roof. So in terms of just your small amount of time here, obviously the games will start next week. But talk to me about what you've experienced so far, being a part of this environment and expectations going into the season.
Yeah, coming in, you can feel it from the first day. It's a winning culture, and every day it's about winning. It doesn't matter who you're playing, you're meant to win. The expectation is to win a title, and that's our goal this season.
So obviously, St. Louis team you played today has some different colors on than the last time, of course, you were here with us. But in terms of being back here in St. Louis, playing in front of the Louligans, in terms of just the memories, how did it feel, coming out here today, feeling some of those aspects that you felt a few seasons ago?
Yeah, it's always good to kind of come back and see St. Louis in the downtown and see some familiar faces in the stands and some of the guys on the team that I remember playing with when they're in the academy. It's always good to be back.
As for other action this week, of course, St. Louis City SC are taking on St. Louis University in a preseason friendly. That kind of fell at a little bit of an awkward time. I'll probably scroll the result and some analysis down below, but still was very impressed with what City did versus Louisville. They're impressed overall with what they've been doing, of course, getting ready for that opening fixture versus Rochester. Exciting time right now. If you're a St. Louis City SC fan, you're getting a handful of first-team player signings. The other teams, the academy teams, the MLS Next Pro team, are getting underway, kicking off what will be a very busy summer of soccer here in St. Louis. So a lot of things going right now with that club. It's got to be exciting for the fans and everybody involved. As far as other schedule drops, I know I've seen a couple of things. You had the St. Louis Lions, again, men's and women's teams that'll get going over the summer. Fire and Ice, waiting on their schedule as well. Club Atletico, I know recently just had their tryouts. They're putting together their roster for when they come back to playing here in the summer. So there's going to be a lot of great local soccer going on as well. Hopefully when I come home in the summer, I will be able to get out there and to cover as much of it as I possibly can and bring it back here for you all to kind of, again, discuss and keep everybody updated on what's going on here in St. Louis with soccer. So again, shaping up to be a great summer with the inclusion of St. Louis City and all that they'll be doing, along with already the great local soccer scene here in St. Louis. So exciting times. I'm looking forward to coming back here in the summer, hopefully beginning in May, and getting out there and covering all these matches for you all at that time. So that almost does it for this episode of the Gateway to Soccer Show. But as I said, I wanted to tackle a few serious subjects to wrap up this week's episode, just because, again, just really for my sake, in terms of getting my feelings out there, kind of expressing how I feel about these situations, giving some analysis about how things are being handled and how things could possibly get better down the road. So there have been a couple of just really, bad incidents here in the world of soccer. And of course, sometimes, the world gets in the way of soccer. But I want to start off with the events from this past week. Can't pronounce the first club's name, the main club that, of course, this concerns, but the incidents and just the absolute brutal and extremely sad violence at the Querétaro versus Atlas match in Mexico, just absolutely bone-chilling. If you haven't seen the videos, please don't look that stuff up. Right now, the reports, again, in terms of the situation, Atlas were the visiting club. They were up 1-0. Violence broke out in the stands. People fled to the field to escape the violence. Eventually, things were kind of put together or kept under control, but the violence continued in the stands all the way up to near the end of the match, where the match had to be abandoned. Fans stormed the field, and again, the violence that then took place, absolutely just chilling to think about and to remember. Don't go look up the videos. There have been reports that said there have been no deaths and just, injuries and some people in critical condition from the government and from other places. Those are lies. If you see the videos, people died here in this situation with the violence that happened in the stands. And it's just really sad to think that still in this day and age that we're having these types of incidents. Now, some punishments from Liga MX have been handed down, like, again, Querétaro. Their fans have been banned, I believe, for a year from attending these matches. Away fans, like them traveling, I think, has been banned. There have been some, decent punishments. But in terms of, trying to eliminate this practice from the game of soccer, they did not go far enough. And you just have to think about the ramifications going forward in terms of Liga MX and their partnership with MLS. Does MLS want to partner with a league that allows this stuff to happen, where this stuff happens, every so often? What does this do for the U.S. men's national team? They have to go to Mexico City here in just a few weeks' time to play in a World Cup qualifier. You got to think about the safety of them. Mexico are part of that joint bid that they're going to host the 2026 World Cup. How does this look for them in terms of that going forward? How they are going to, handle other fans and other clubs from other countries coming in? Can you promise the safety for those fans and for those players and the staffs of those teams after this? I don't think you can. In terms of just, trying to eliminate this stuff from the game, I don't think they went far enough. Just can't believe what some of those fans, families, their children that had to escape from this violence. It's soccer. It's a game at that point, really. Human lives should not be put at risk over a game. I'm sorry. I know it's passion. There's passion. We really care about this type of stuff as fans. It should never come to this. So again, just seeing that this past week, it's just horrifying and added to already some of the stuff that was going on. One of those other things, of course, is what is happening in Ukraine right now. My heart goes out to the people of Ukraine, whether they're currently in the country or, again, they've had family there. They're from Ukraine themselves. They've immigrated over here to the U.S. I can't imagine right now how everyone is feeling. Just the utter terror, being in danger, fearing for your lives, your family lives, your friends' lives. I can't imagine it right now. And just some of the reports and some of the scenes that have been coming out over the past couple of weeks from Ukraine, again, they just rip your heart apart and just make you question, this world and in terms of just, how we've come to this, or why do we let this happen? Why does this continue to happen? It just really hurts. What has been sort of uplifting in those moments has been how the world of football have reacted to it. Just, the scenes pre-match, fans, chanting, clapping in unison in support of Ukraine. Those players who are from Ukraine, getting, different types of receptions. I forget who it was that came on, as a substitute, was handed the captain's armband. The crowd gave like a 2-minute standing ovation before play got back underway. And you could just see in the player's face how much that meant to him. And, those types of, gestures are being shown throughout types of different leagues. And it's important right now to support those players, coaches, and people right now from Ukraine, because right now they're just dealing with an absolute worst nightmare. And as much as I love being a Chelsea fan, I don't know if you all saw, it was either the Crystal Palace match or it was the other match after that. The fans chanting Roman Abramovich's name during that is just disgusting. I mean, it just made my skin crawl. Just horrible time and place regardless, but really it's just a mean gesture at that point. So again, condemn that. That was stupid. Honestly, Chelsea have enough reasons for people to hate them. This just, added to it. So again, right now, people from Ukraine, the country of Ukraine, deserve our undying support. That's all really that we can do, as normal citizens right now, is what we can do. Show those little bit of gestures, showing that we care, showing that we support them right now in what is going on currently with their situation. The last thing I wanted to talk about was Katie Meyer. If you don't know who Katie Meyer is, she's a goalkeeper for Stanford University. A couple years ago, she made a couple of huge saves in a penalty kick shootout, which helped lead Stanford to a national championship. Those moments went viral, were shown on SportsCenter because, again, she was so animated. She was pumping her chest. She was screaming. It was so cool to see that level of passion in soccer in that moment. It was, again, one of the biggest moments of her life. And it was just a really cool viral moment that was shared, all over the world. Unfortunately, the news came down last week, I believe, that Katie Meyer had passed away at the age of 22. And as much as, you don't want to speculate these types of things, eventually it was discovered that she had committed suicide. Again, in terms of potential reasoning for it, there's been all types of speculation that she might have been facing some type of punishment from the university over she confronted someone who was, either messing with her teammate or said something to a teammate And the way she had confronted this person was subject to a review and potential trial by the university. Otherwise, other than that, I mean, everything else you really just would be making up, and we don't know what led to her taking her own life. And I just want to say right now, from personal experience, as just, growing up through as a normal teen, as someone, going through college, someone who played sports, and right now someone who's currently working in college sports at the Division II level. What I see right now is that athletes have so much on their plate, more so than anybody else could even imagine. They're basically working. This is basically a job for them. 30 plus hours a week are committed to training, playing, practicing, team bonding experiments, meetings, all this type of stuff. And then they have to, on top of that, deal with schoolwork. They have to deal with, relationships, friendships, family stuff, everything going on. You add some of the stuff that's going on in the world right now, and it could be just enough to make you feel like you can't handle it all. And again, I'm going to turn 27 next week, and I know it feels weird. Some people say, no, you're not that old. No, I'm not. But you begin to have these types of, retrospective moments when you consider I'm 5 years older than she is. And, I'm so much more removed already from, that college world. But I can still remember the pressures that I faced at that time, even going back further into high school, and just the feelings that you have of, being overwhelmed, those feelings of depression, and how you just don't think life is going to get better. And for someone who's had personal experience with this issue, it hurts me to see that she had this big moment, her whole life going for her, and just the pressures and the things that she dealt with overcame her and led her to taking her own life. It's heartbreaking to me, and it just is something that I hope, that we can get better at soon, because right now we're losing too many people to suicide for varying different reasons, but especially in college athletics, the pressures that these athletes are under already, and how right now we don't have the system in place to fully understand what they're going through and to give them the proper help that they deserve, and to kind of, protect us from these types of situations. We got to figure it out. And again, with the 24-hour news cycle that we have, this story has already kind of been brushed, to the back page already with what's going on in the world, and also just within college sports. Of course, you got March Madness coming up here for basketball, everything else going on. But I don't want this type of stuff to be left alone. I don't want it to be pushed under the rug, because we need to address it. It's the only way that it's going to get better, and to prevent situations like Katie, prevent others from taking their own life, because it's a final decision, guys. You can't take it back. And the pain that it causes for everybody else and everything else in this world, it's just, you can't measure it. And I just want to prevent more of this type of stuff from happening. And I see it up close now every day, what athletes, what they're going through, what they have to do just to play the game that they love at a higher level than they've ever experienced before. It can be too much at times, and we need to find a way to address that. So within soccer, again, it was cool to see the soccer community, the support and love, from MLS, the NWSL, to the college ranks, coaches, players, etc., show their support for Katie and her family right now, what they're going through. But it should never come to this. And I feel for her. Again, I can remember that moment playing this yesterday, and it's sad that she doesn't get another opportunity to have another moment like that. 22 years old. 22 years old. Just can't believe it. So, again, I would encourage everybody, again, in the coming months, I won't have another opportunity to talk or do this show here until I get back in the summer. But my last tip, or my last, advice here, again, is to just be there, especially for family and friends, but be there for people. My experience is that before you let this situation come to a head, reach out to someone. You never know, okay? Life does get better. And the important starting point is believing in that notion, or at least reaching out to someone who believes in that notion, talking with them, admitting what you're going through, and finding some type of way to get through it together, to not be alone. That's the important thing. You don't want to be alone in these types of situations, and there are ways to not be. Reach out. I mean, again, I know there's numerous different types of hotlines in there, but the best advice would be to reach out to people you know. You'd be surprised how willing and helpful people will be at your lowest points to help bring you up to a level that is acceptable. So again, sorry to end on kind of a downer, guys, but I just, the overwhelmingness of these situations for the past couple of weeks has been a lot. I know sports can be used as an escape from the real world, but sometimes you can't escape it. And the best way to deal with it is to face it head on and to talk about it and to address it. So those are my thoughts on all those issues. Would love to hear from people as well in terms of just, support or just your thoughts on the matter or what can be done or anything else that matters. So again, I appreciate this platform. I appreciate you all who still stuck by me, even though I've been away here with my job. It was good to see familiar faces, some local podcasts. Again, I've mentioned them several times, Flyover Footy, Louisville City FC, again, Show Up, Make Noise. All these people do great work locally here. Continue to follow them, listen to their podcasts, and continue to support each other. That's just the bottom line. So this is officially the end of another episode of the Gateway Soccer Show. Thank you so much for tuning in. As always, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to my YouTube channel. Hopefully here, have a great spring sports season. I'll be back in the summer to cover local soccer, St. Louis City SC, and everything else that'll be going on. It will hopefully be another great summer of soccer. So again, thank you all for watching. Have a great weekend.